Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here with us. This is a Q&A with Carson, who's on the team of Tableland, which is an NFT project. They recently had their drop, which we're going to get into. And you know, this conversation, like Carson just mentioned in Limbo Chat, not really an agenda. You know, we're not marketing an upcoming drop or anything. Just talking about some cool nerdy stuff that they're working on. Potentially very innovative for NFTs in general. And I am going into this kind of blind a little bit. I know, you know, some things about Tableland, and I bought one just because so many people kept mentioning it and were excited about it. But you know, I'm excited to get into it. Some of it is kind of technical, and so it's kind of good that I think that I'm coming in blind, so we can start from scratch, because I know many people maybe haven't heard about Tableland at all. So we can start like at a high level, and how this will work is, you know, we'll chat for half an hour or so, and then I'll open up the stage for people to ask questions, and specifically I'm gonna select people from just Midnight Labs internally, so people who have the tokens or are on the inside of the server. So I'll let them ask some questions. Maybe they'll hit on the technical stuff more than I will, since I'm not a developer. But awesome. Thanks for being here, Carson. How's it going?
Yeah, great. It's going well. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's nice to interact with some other communities and things like that. It's been a whirlwind couple of weeks for us, actually. So it's kind of nice to just sit back and talk about what we're building and doing. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I bet. So why don't we start just like super high level? I guess we could start with what is Tableland? How do you explain it? What's like the elevator pitch? And then the team, maybe we can get into why you guys started Tableland in the first place.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so yeah, the high level thing, and something that I think is kind of relevant for the group here is, so Tableland is kind of a bunch of things. The main thing that Tableland is it's a network and a decentralized protocol for structured relational data accessible via like Ethereum, EVM chains. And so what I mean by that is it's a protocol for tables of data, like spreadsheets of data, in a Web3 native kind of way. So like referencing, you know, structured data and linking it across apps and experiences and NFTs and everything. So that's the sort of like, that is what Tableland is, and that is what our like core engineering team builds. But we also recently launched an NFT, which we call Rigs. And Rigs is, you know, I don't know if, I mean, you own one, some people here probably own one. They're pretty rad looking, which is great. But Rigs are also this sort of like ticket into interacting with the Tableland network and protocol. And Rigs are actually built on top of the Tableland database protocol. So the metadata associated with a rig is actually stored on Tableland and leverages a bunch of the like relational SQL queryability to make them kind of a unique thing. And I can talk about other unique things we did around rigs that leveraged Tableland. But that's probably a good high-level overview for now.
Okay. Yeah. So in general, you have Tableland, which is this kind of project that is helping NFTs use relational data in new ways, and then you have Rigs, which is like your proof of concept NFT project that utilizes this technology and is then just going to show off sort of the capabilities of it and maybe inspire other creators to use the system, right?
Totally. And also rigs are like kind of a crucial component of the protocol, and they're always going to be like the thing that if we can't do a new awesome thing with rigs on Tableland, then we probably aren't going to do it. So like it's a really good testing ground for a lot of these new interactions and things. So,
got it.
Yeah.
So why don't we get into like the problem that, you know, spurred you guys to come up with Tableland in the first place? Like what does the NFT market look like before Tableland, right? What are the issues with that, and what do you hope it'll look like afterwards? Like what is this solving for?
Yeah. So I mean, I can go back to like the dawn of the team time and start there, but maybe just focusing really more on the immediate problem is more interesting for folks here. But just to give you a little bit of context, so most of our team, all of our team, comes from like a distributed peer-to-peer. I like to distinguish between decentralized web, DWeb, and Web3, where DWeb is like the peer-to-peer protocols and things like that, and Web3 is the like blockchain and DApp and NFT type and DeFi stuff. So we come from a Web3 background, or a DWeb background, and we've done a lot of work with databases. And we started to, see the uptick of Web3 engagement. We thought, okay, cool, we have a decentralized database. People are going to want that. And, you start to look at people building dApps and apps and NFTs, and you realize they kind of have to make a choice about where they're going to store the data that drives their experience. And this is a choice that Web2 developers have been making for a long time, and the choice often leads to, well, let's stick it on AWS. So you kind of have a choice in Web3, which is you either stick everything into the sort of like Web3 mold, where you try to get as much stuff on chain as you can, or you kind of try to take like a hybrid Web2 approach, where you put like the metadata for your NFT on, Amazon or Google Cloud or, something like that. And unfortunately, both of those choices are kind of bummer choices. You either have this like really expensive stuff on chain, or you have this really brittle experience off chain. Things like IPFS are nice, and I won't go too much into detail on what IPFS is, but it's a distributed like storage layer for Web3 data. And that gets you pretty close, but it's very static, right? It's like a one-time thing. You create some data, you put it on there, you get this static reference to it. So the problem was, for dynamic data, we've got this sort of like big missing gap for developers. And so what that leads to is, if I don't have a dynamic native Web3 solution, I'm just not going to build a thing that requires it. And that kind of stifles innovation. And, we've seen a lot of really awesome, like NFT innovation in the last couple of months even. But there's, that's taken a lot of people going like, wait a minute, it's time to start thinking about more exciting and amazing things that we can do with this like building block. And the technology that we have is getting in our way. And so that is really where, the impetus for Tableland came, is like, we want to just get rid of that barrier. We had experience in databases, we saw this gap, and our previous work didn't quite fit the mold. And the real big piece there is basically, if you want to build a database that's Web3 native, then you better leverage Web3 concepts like addresses, like ownership, like transferability, and all of these building blocks that make building Web3 experiences exciting. Your database has to support that. And so that's really where Tableland came in. And so the tagline we came up with earlier is, look, it's just tables. And it's driven by all the things that you already think about. Every table is an NFT. And so everybody in this room knows what that kind of implies. It means you can transfer ownership. It means that it's unique. It means that it's like can be considered an asset. It maybe even accrue value. But it is also a table. It's a spreadsheet. You can stick stuff in it and increase or decrease the value based on what it is that, what you're referencing. So that's the sort of like problem space that we were addressing, is like the technology is getting in the way of the innovation, so let's lower that barrier to entry.
So this might be a dumb question, but also just because I'm like I said, I'm coming in kind of blind. So when you said the tables are the NFT, can you explain that a little bit more? Like, so are you basically creating these dynamic tables and then putting them on chain in a way that they weren't before? Is that the magic?
Yeah, that's a big piece of the magic. So the way the Tableland network works is there's a network of validators, and actually for anyone here who's run a validator on other networks before, jump into our Discord and let me know your experiences. We'd love to get you in on our early validator network. But there's a network of validators, and they're the ones that, hopefully this term is familiar to people, but they're the ones that materialize the table. They're the ones that take action on chain and convert it into state like off chain or on the validator. And so I can say like insert, awesome row into table, Carson's table, and that's a reasonably close approximation of a valid SQL statement, and those validators will take that and materialize that. They will basically stick the row in the table, and now I can go back and query that and get the state back. When I do that, I'm also creating an NFT on, say, Ethereum mainnet or Polygon or whatever chain I want to target, and Tableland targets lots of different chains. I'm also minting a table, minting an NFT, which is this table, and the table has metadata just like any NFT that you can own. In this case, the metadata is how many rows does it have, how many columns, what does the structure of the table look like, and what are the conditions on the table, things like that. And so I literally, when I create that table, I literally own the table, and I can decide who has the right to update it, who has the right to mutate it. I can transfer ownership from me to you, and now you can own the table, and all sorts of all the sort of primitives that come with an NFT. So instead of this NFT referencing an image or like some access token or something like that, this NFT references the state of the table.
Got it. That's helpful. So to make it a little less abstract, do you guys have any? I mean, this could be maybe rigs, right? Like show exactly how this is going to play out with rigs. But if we can use just like a more familiar NFT that people know of, and just say like, okay, here's a practical use case for how you can mutate or how it relates to the table. I think that would be super helpful to just get us grounded a bit more.
Yeah, totally. It's a very good idea. So, well, first I'll explain how rigs works, and then I'll explain how you could take a similar concept to that and actually build on that and build on even existing NFTs that don't leverage Tableland. So the way rigs works is rigs are an NFT that you can own. It is a super cool vehicle with a bunch of lore around the badlands of the fall of the centralized world and moving into a decentralized world. I highly recommend you go check it out. It's a pretty cool story. Mm-hmm. Anyway, rigs are made up of different components, parts. And these parts are described by attributes, just like any NFT. And those attributes have rarities, and people are trying to look for them. And some of the rigs are quote unquote originals, i.e., they have all of their original parts. All of this data, this information that's driving the metadata that drives the NFT, is stored in tables, literally stored in spreadsheets. And what often projects will do is they will actually, they'll either create JSON documents or they'll, handcraft these things, and then they'll just store them on an Amazon web server somewhere, or they'll use Google Docs even, or something like that. And then when they launch their NFT, they point the token URI to some representation of the metadata, and that could be on AWS, it could be on IPFS, whatever. On Tableland, you can do that exact same thing, but what you do is you can reference the data within a table, so like a row within a table. And that relation between tables can get as complicated as you want, but the simplest is just like, okay, this rig NFT has this, that, and the other trait, and they are inserted into the table. And when you display it on OpenSea, you get the metadata, you can check the rarity, blah blah blah. Very exciting. Where it gets a little more exciting is that because those tables themselves are mutable, the traits of the NFT, if the experience that the developer is trying to create, wants it, could change. And so one of the things that we're doing with rigs is you can have additional badges. Badges would probably, I don't want to reveal exactly how we're doing it, but badges exist as another table. And that table, because it is a SQL table, because it's a relational database, it can relate to an existing rig. And so you can say, okay, this rig also has this particular badge, for instance. And each rig could reference multiple different badges, and each of those badges might exist in one table or a bunch of different tables, or however the developer wants to structure it. And so you can get kind of creative about how you do this. But that's how rigs works, is rigs, the metadata for rigs are really just rows in a giant table. And in this case, it's 3,000 row table, which I guess isn't that giant, but and then you can sort of Okay, so that's how rigs work. And so if you were going to launch an NFT, the simplest way to do it on Tableland without having to rely, so that you don't have to rely on centralized backend, is you basically just launch your NFT metadata as a giant table with each token being its own row. And you can even lazily update this, right? So like at mint time, you could lazy mint and just like insert the row as you go. So that's the simplest way. And does that make sense to everybody or to you so far?
It does, yeah.
Cool. So big table, rows for tokens.
Right.
Okay, now I've deployed this, and now someone can build an experience on top of that because they can relate to each row within the table. There's a linkage. There's a primary key that says like this is token ID blah 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 in table X, and now I want to like basically tack on a I don't know, maybe I want to use this rig in a game, in a different game where you can drive it. Okay, well I can just reference, do you own this, are you playing the game and you own this rig? Let's just check the ownership. Yep, cool. All right, I will reference that rig in my own table, and now it's set its state to like driving, right? So now I've got like a little column in my row that says driving equals yes, or something like that. So you can start to build up things that way. You can also do this with other assets that already exist. So one of the things that we announced yesterday in our community thing around rigs is you'll be able to have potentially pilots that you can associate with a rig. And we're still ironing out the details of that. But what that will look like is a rig's like table will reference a pre-existing asset that someone owns. And when they transfer ownership of that asset, it will transfer it away from the rig. So you'll be able to do things like, pick your own driver or build these like different experiences on top of that. You could build another example I really like to use. This might make sense to folks here too. Is are you familiar with the Loot project?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, so Loot is an NFT where you've got a bunch of traits, and they are basically like things in your loot bag that you can pull out. So what you might do is you might actually then create another NFT, say a character, who has an inventory of loot. And so the character would, can build up their inventory by buying more loot bags. And then in the game, they might want to like pull out their broadsword, put on their helmet. On all of that type of state of broadsword on, helmet on, that could be dynamically mutated in the table stored for that particular NFT character on Tableland. And it's dynamic, but only the owner has the permission to mutate that row. So only the owner can pull out the broadsword and set it to yes, or put on the helmet and set it to yes, or set it to no, etc.
Do they have to own the table NFT?
They only need to own the. So it depends on how you would how the developer would want to structure it. The way I would probably do it is I would have loot character NFT where each row specifies the state of my character, and so the user would only need to own the the character for their particular row, and then the way that the access control works in Tableland is it could check to see does Carson own this particular row in the table? Yes, he does. Okay, cool. He's allowed to turn on or off these traits. Okay. So you have to own the NFT, but not necessarily own the table.
Right.
Yeah. And then you can, because it's an NFT and there's assets, there's all sorts of wild things you could do. Like you could own a table that you don't have write permission to mutate, for instance. And so you can start to imagine things where people build up curate music curation, a table of music curation, and some famous music curator created this table, and then they sold the sort of rights to this curated table to someone else. Now that someone else owns the table, but maybe it's been locked and they're not allowed to change it, or all sorts of different things like that.
Got it. So basically, we're going from this world of static NFTs, and they were static because it's very expensive to do more dynamic stuff on chain, or at least it was. And places like IPFS, they're just one-time drops. They're not really meant to be dynamically updated. And maybe also just because people haven't been original enough to like care about doing more dynamic stuff. But now with your solution, so you have this table on chain. I'm guessing it's a lot cheaper to manipulate it, even on L1 Ethereum.
Yeah, I mean, and so this starts to get into some questions about why it's cool to support multiple chains. So, on an L1, well, first of all, it is still like comparatively cheap to do these operations, even on an L1, because a SQL statement can be compressed and is pretty small, and it leads to like potentially massive changes off chain. So you can imagine like something like, okay, update. I don't know. Say we had a 10,000 row NFT drop. Okay, and as part of like the story arc for this particular NFT, every user who had their NFT, I don't know, it was nesting for X amount of time, they got some trait turned on. Okay, imagine that. Mm-hmm. So that change could actually be done with a single SQL statement. You could say update all rows where nesting greater than 5, set, awesome trait equal to on. Okay, so that's a reasonably close approximation to a valid SQL statement. That costs almost nothing. Even on an L1, it's like maybe dollars to do that, but you've made massive changes to a whole bunch of rows in a table. So you get this sort of like compression that way. Additionally, the really cool thing here is because the Tableland validators are actually running and following multiple chains. Say you had a metadata experience that changed a lot, right? So imagine, I don't know, you could change the eye color of your characters, and for some reason that's a fun thing to do, and you do it frequently. Well, you could store the metadata on a cheaper chain like Optimism. Okay, in Optimism, those transactions are A, like almost instantaneous, and B, like fractions of dollars, like super cheap. And you can still leverage all the batching and all the like sort of like compression that SQL does. It would be really, really cheap. But you can still reference in the NFT the metadata on an asset stored on mainnet Ethereum. And in fact, this is exactly what we've done with rigs, is a bunch of the rigs data and traits are stored on other chains as far as Tableland is concerned, but the asset itself is on like a main chain. And so you can do the like very infrequent but like kind of main chain critical things on the main chain, and you can do the more frequent, cheap, like things that don't rely on main chain state on cheaper chains, and so you can like hyper optimize the experience. And we're already seeing a couple of teams doing that in terms of like game development, where you've got like important character state on a main chain, but you've got like game state on a cheaper chain. So you can kind of have this hybrid approach. So hopefully that kind of gets at it. But if you wanted to do something like, here is a table where only Bored Ape owners are allowed to insert a row, that, which is totally doable thing, that table would need to exist on mainnet, like the same chain as the Bored Ape, in order to be able to do that. But if you just have like, this table can be edited by like this address or by anyone, as long as it's after block 37, then it can be on a different chain.
Got it. Okay. We definitely got into the weeds on the technical stuff pretty early on, and hopefully some people have some questions around that later on. I like to bubble up a little bit and just talk about Tableland as a whole again, and how we get from, this being like a somewhat, still niche solution that you hope to eventually, turn into a standard pretty much in the space, right? So how big is the team right now, and how have you guys taken funding? Like, is this bootstrapped, and how should we think about, like, how is the organization going to grow? Is this all dependent on like partnerships and you building out like the collab team and reaching out to individual projects? How do we get from where we are now to this being, a lot more common?
Yeah, this is all very good questions. So the first answer to that requires a bit of context. So Tableland is a project that was incubated and spun out of my team, or the team I'm part of, Textile. Textile has been around as an organization since 2016, and we've done a lot of work in the like IPFS and Filecoin space. And Tableland was a sort of like breakout product that we sort of stepped all the way back to first principles and took it from conception to full-blown MVP, and now to like testnet and then mainnet launch next year. So the team behind Tableland has been around, like I said, most of us have been around the space since 2016, I think. Mm-hmm. We are currently, Tableland full-time team is 12 full-time contributors. And that includes engineers, DevRel, like a partnerships lead, CEO, CTO, and everybody in between, and me, who just sort of does everything. Does not all the work, right. Does a little bit of everything. I'm gonna get in trouble from that team if I take all the credit. Anyway, so we're a 12-person team. So Textile was a VC funded company that has done pretty well and has a lot of like crypto assets that we have been lucky enough to be able to leverage over the last few years. And Tableland and the team behind Tableland will be doing a raise probably in the in the foreseeable future, just to take us from testnet to mainnet. And we're still trying to decide exactly how we want to play this out, but the sort of logical long-term end goal is a token-based sustainability model for paying validators and all the token economics that comes with. And then does that answer most of that?
Yeah. And then also just like what's the main growth vehicle for this? Is it just business development based, or is this going to be, are you envisioning this being like an open API that people are just like passively plugging into, or how do we get from those rates to like 1,000 projects using this?
Yeah, both. So we're actually, and there's a couple of fronts that we're pretty excited about exploring. So one is we've got a pilot program which is like direct partnership angle, which is here, come build, here's some funding to get started, get some great use cases, big focus on games and sort of like utility NFT type experiences. And so that's like a sort of early model for partnerships. And then like hackathons and just getting in front of developers is another one that we've found with a lot of success with past projects. But then the other one is actually just going directly to marketplaces as a way to say like, look, here, if you've got projects that are deploying NFT experiences and they want them to be dynamic, we have this project, or we have this product that you can recommend and start to build like unique experiences on the marketplaces that you can only really build if you're building with Tableland or something like Tableland, because there's some standard work that we're trying to push forward as well with some of the larger ecosystems to say like, look, even if you're not using Tableland, you should be using this way to represent metadata in a dynamic way. So the big push right now is just partnership development and bringing in developers to experiment with us on more dynamic experiences.
Are there competing solutions right now that people are using? Because I know that we've been hearing about metadata and the potential of metadata for a while now, and there's a lot people want to do mutations, evolution of NFTs, wearable assets, all this kind of interaction, and I imagine this has been top of mind for many creators. So have they been attempting to do this with another piece of technology that you guys are maybe competing with, or is this sort of everyone's kind of scratching their heads right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's kind of two ways to look at it. One is that people are trying to come up with creative ways to do this with what exists now. And like for sure, some of the SVG based like on-chain NFT metadata examples are a good example of this, where it's like, okay, look, I've got this constraint. I know I'm not going to be able to get as expressive as I want, but man, some of that, like those limitations really breed some amazing creativity. So on the one front, I think there's just some people are like, yeah, I want a dynamic experience, but I'm not going to build a whole new protocol to get there. I'm going to use what I have. And people are getting creative there, and that's actually pretty cool. And everything we build, we better be able to support that as well. The other front is that, people just like, well, you know what? The like decentralized, like the experience I really want, the like decentralized network sort of Tableland type thing, just isn't there yet, or doesn't exist, or I didn't know about it. So I'm going to accept that if I want to do this the way I want to do it, I'm just going to have like a centralized web app driving my metadata or driving my experience. And honestly, that's not the worst thing in the world to happen, right? Because you get an experience for your users that is enjoyable and it's fun, and like realistically, if you're serious about it, you're not going to disappear, you're not going to go away. Like Amazon it behooves them to make sure that your app keeps running and that they give good uptime and all this stuff. So like it's pretty safe right now to still build a centralized solution to get to the like user experience that you want. The space that Tableland in is like, well, that's a bummer decision that you had to make. Let's make it so that you don't have to make that decision. So let's make it so that you can build the dynamic experience that you want without the sort of like, oh shoot, I guess I'll do it this way kind of moment. But we're pretty excited to find teams that are settling on a centralized web app solution and then saying like, hey, how do we get it so that you can decentralize this a little bit? So I think that's where we're at. There are related technologies for sure that people are using. I think in some contexts you could probably use the graph to do some of this stuff, and for sure Chainlink provides some inroads to getting dynamism. Like you can imagine I don't know for how familiar folks are here with Chainlink, but you can get kind of like on oracles to get sort of off-chain data on-chain. And so you can imagine scenarios where you could get some dynamism that way as well. And I think there's some teams getting pretty creative on that front as well. So I would say that's probably the closest next thing.
One thing I've been a little confused about is, I've heard people talk about Tableland and often they're talking about proposals, like, oh, here's a proposal that might pass or whatever. Is this a DAO or where do the proposals come in?
Well, so we just recently, there's a couple of ways that proposals can come in. And the like longer term vision for the like fully decentralized mainnet Tableland is that it'll be the decisions about the protocol will be based on proposals. So like, hey, should we add this SQL feature should we add this feature to the SQL spec that Tableland supports? Let's have a vote. Mm-hmm. And that will probably be driven by something like rigs holders or table holders and things like that. But in the much more recent history, we've had a couple of pretty cool ways that rigs owners were involved in decisions around Tableland. So Tableland, like I mentioned, we have this pilot program. This is like projects that have applied to get some space, time, and funding to build on Tableland. And there's been some amazing ones. So I think some folks from the community here are even in that program. There's like a soulbound NFT one that was very popular. There's a couple of games that people are building. There is some really interesting work on sort of like wrapping and creating dynamic experiences on top of existing NFTs. Anyway, there's all these projects. They applied and got into the pilot program. And then Rigs holders held a vote as to which project would get some sort of like bootstrap or additional funding. Mm-hmm. And so that was the proposal. The proposal was we should fund one of these projects. Here are the 3 projects. Please evaluate them and allocate your rigs to whichever one you think is the most promising. And this was really kind of exciting. I had never really participated in something like this, where like owners of the sort of like utility token within the community got to vote on like the technology that was being built. But that's literally what happened. And so now I believe it was the Soulbound NFT project that got the most votes around being the most promising and exciting project. So they got a funding boost. Now this pilot program is going to continue, and then towards the end of the funding program, there'll be a new proposal about which project basically delivered on their promise of technology the best. And again, Rigs holders will get to vote on that after evaluating them. And we'll be doing a bunch of like AMAs and like sort of like meet the developers type interactions, so that folks who have no idea what, like, you know, how we can't expect everybody with a rig to like evaluate a project's code. So they can actually just go and talk to the actual developer and say, like, what did you build? Why did you build it this way? How is that going to help me when I want to play XYZ game? And really get the like people who own a stake in the community and in the protocol, get them in front of real developers.
Right.
And this is something that's kind of quite near and dear to our team, which is we're all engineers and developers. And one of the amazing things about Web3 is like this whole concept of like ownership and community and like engagement. And this is going to be a platform that we can use to really get people who are just stoked about the project or love the art or whatever, give them a direct line to people who are building stuff. When we're in a bear market like we are now, it's like, you know, what's the saying, you know, things are built in a bear market. Well, wouldn't it be really nice if you could help direct what gets built and how it gets built and all that? So that's a big piece of that. So that's what those proposals are about right now. That's the short-term one. The longer-term one is, actually changing the direction or changing the way the protocol works.
Right. So, by the way, guys, I think it's probably a good time to open it up to questions. If anybody has one, you know, raise your hand here. You can also type into Limbo chat, and I'll read that. In terms of bringing people up on stage, I think just for the sake of time, I'm going to limit it to people who are Midnight Labs token holders or on in one of the cohorts internally. But feel free to start raising your hand. I just want to talk a little bit more about the rigs themselves, because now people are listening to this, and you know they might be inspired. They might think this is an awesome idea, and they're like, okay, how do I get involved? And it sounds like rigs is that way to do so, but it's also its own game, right? So rigs are these 3,000 NFTs. They're cool looking art, but you're also going to be using this as the canvas to show off what you guys can do with this technology. And so, it's a proof of concept, but also it's tied in a way to the trajectory of the organization or the project as a whole, because, in one case, you can use them as a way to vote on proposals that shift the direction of the project. But in another case, it's tied to these validators themselves. And you mentioned that down the road, this might be a way for people to earn tokens, while supporting the project. So maybe you can talk a little bit about just the different value layers of rigs and how to think about them.
Yeah, and there's a lot there. Nobody can see, but I was kind of nodding along the whole way that you were just talking, because that's a pretty great summary of kind of things that rigs holders can expect. And we actually just did a bit of a community announcement around this. So I can try to get the, I don't know, what's the policy on posting links and stuff, but I can get the town hall minutes that we just had, which actually directly answers a lot of these questions. So that should be the source of truth. And if I say something wrong here, apologies for that. But I can get that link to folks in the community if they want. But there's a bunch of ways that you can interact with rigs. Like you said, rigs are our demonstrator experience, and you can do a bunch of cool stuff. We've got a roadmap already laid out for rigs of sort of shorter term stuff. One of the things is like this concept of garaging. So with rigs, we're kind of like doing almost the opposite to Moonbirds, where right now you like, it's more fun to drive a rig or to fly a rig. So the sort of like default doing cool stuff state is not in a garage, and then you can stick your rig in the garage if you want to like sell it or put it back on a market or something like that. And so there'll be some interactions that way. And then there's plans for things like, look, if you take your rig out and you fly it for a long time, those are getting you flight hours, or like we talk in block time on in blockchain world, so flight blocks or something like that, or flight time. Anyway, the longer you do that, the more that earns you, pilot experience points or something like that, which means that you're going to be eligible for like drops and things like that. So it's, this the whole tying the thing back to the lore and helping you do things like pull things off the market and get rewarded for it, all that sort of standard stuff, or increasingly standard stuff that you're seeing with other projects. Then you can use it to vote on what gets built on Tableland through these proposals. And then there'll be some ways to tie rig ownership back into helping to secure the protocol longer term. And so we're still trying to figure out exactly how that's going to work, but there's going to be some form of like staking involved to help support validators. Validators will also likely have to either own or, be loaned rigs in order to participate in the network. And then there's some pretty exciting stuff around things like racing rigs. So you can imagine if a bunch of validators have rigs and they're like working to secure the network and they're storing more tables faster, they should get rewarded for that. And so there's this concept of like, well, if they're doing that, they're basically like driving their rig and doing work on the tableland, and like they're winning the race kind of type of interactions. And so like the idea is with the rigs, their importance for the network will increase over time. Right now, it's just helping to decide what gets built. Next, it'll be helping to secure what has been built. Mm-hmm. After that, it'll be, and it gets sort of like increasingly important component of the network. At some point, your average developer just like won't be able to get into a rig because ideally number go up. So there'll be other ways that like developers can interact with rigs holders in order to get into the network and to potentially like have you can imagine other launches and things like that are related. But again, we're already like, it's so fun to just sit back and go like, what else can we make these rigs do for the network? But the like concrete plans are in that roadmap, and that's what I would refer folks to. So I'll definitely share that.
Got it. Yeah. So that it's an evolving thing, but the high level is that rigs are hopefully a fun experience in their own right, and that's going to get it's going to act as marketing, because we're still. It's just so early in terms of like what these NFTs are capable of, and it's nuts. I think we're gonna look back on this and be like, why the hell were people? I mean, it's cool to trade these static images, but once I feel like we see the potential of what they can do, it's just gonna be silly that no one was talking or thinking or pushing for it as fast as probably we should have been, just because how much more interesting things can get. And so like hopefully this is like one of the first examples of that, where people are gonna be like, holy shit, like we can actually do that with our NFTs, and why doesn't my Moonbird do that, or my Bored Ape, or let's get more fun injected into our projects. And so it hopefully is fun in its own right, but then it's also, in a way, it's a way to support this project, but also get exposure to a technology that people might believe is the solution to bring us to that next phase, and there are ways to benefit through the upside of the project if they think that this is a way forward. So right.
Yeah, and like just to kind of pile on to your last thing about like, holy shit, these experiences can be amazing. I don't know how many people here are gamers, right? But the number of times I've talked to someone where they're like, yeah, I had this character and I played this game for like 8 years, and then I don't know, I had kids or I got a more demanding job and I couldn't play the game anymore. But that whole time, like that character should have been building up like metadata, information about what levels they played, like what, all their XP points, all that stuff. And then they should have just been able to like sell that or give it away even to another player to say like, look, I invested actual time. I traded time for like XP in this game, and now I want to give it to you because I want my character's like legacy to live on. And like those types of dynamic experiences are what like gets our team pretty jazzed. It's like, I would never have thought about that as a like way to actually build an experience and build a business around it. Like I'm just really good at games and I build up these characters and sell them. Anyway, that's the sort of thing that gets us pretty jazzed. It's like, yeah, we're not even remotely.
Yeah, like if you think of everything you can do with gaming except doing it in this sort of immutable, permanent way. Like there, I used to play The Sims a lot, and I think it was Sims 3 that they introduced like this idea of genetics and offspring, and just the concept was pretty revolutionary at the time, that you could have this like character that then passes on its traits, and then you have like this family lineage, and it just keeps going and going and going. And just the concept of like what NFTs are capable of, even with that, right? Like just traits and genetics and evolution, and we could start seeing these projects as long lasting experiences that it's silly to say, but like passing down an NFT like from one generation to the next, and that is like part of like the family lore too. Like why not, right? Like I think we are heading in that direction, and it's just the tech is just not there yet, but the creativity is going to be unleashed.
Yeah, exactly.
So
anyway, I can talk about it for days.
I just want to bring one person up at least to ask a question, so we don't have to keep hearing my voice. So Dodo, let me bring you up.
Thank you, JC. Hey, Carson. So thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. So I was hoping you could provide me with some clarity around, rigs and kind of the significance of original rigs. And, my specific question is, can you take a rig that isn't 100% original and reacquire those original parts to basically, rebuild whatever the original rig was? Because, you have a really cool system here where, all of the different rigs and stuff are serialized, and you can query from the SQL databases to basically figure out, who owns what. And I'm assuming you could probably figure out, what pieces of my original rig are missing and kind of where are they currently. So is there a way to, perhaps in the future or even now, trade parts with other, rig owners so that you can kind of rebuild and complete an original rig? Is that possible right now?
This is such a good question. We have talked about this so much, and I don't really want to give you a definitive answer on it, but that would be really awesome if you could do that, wouldn't it? And probably we should do that. I for sure want to be able to do something like, put my rig in a chop shop, pull it apart, go find people who have like the pieces that I need, and try to reconstruct a new rig. You cannot do that right now. Rigs are currently like built, and they're like what they're built from. Those traits are not. The dynamism of those have not been enabled, but it is possible because it's built on Tableland. So that I mean, personally, I think that experience should exist, and so I don't know. Let's keep talking about this because I think that would be extremely cool. One thing I do really want to do right now is, and I think we will do this either through like community, like we'll just get someone from the community to do it, or we'll kind of bootstrap it and get someone to take it further, is we would like to basically have a parts shop, like just as a web app, where you can kind of build up your own rig from parts. Not necessarily from the official like rigs collection, but just like build it up as a web app and create cool combinations and things like that, and share them, with the community and say, oh, check this rig out. And then in theory, you could do some things like search over rigs to find the closest one, or you could search across all the rigs to see like, okay, if I really wanted to build this rig, which other rigs like have the parts I would need to do that. So I think in the shorter term, for sure, we could do some cool things like that. I love this question though, because it's like, yes, please, that would be so rad.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I'm just thinking about it more from, kind of a gamified aspect where you could really kind of develop unique trading economies within, this world's kind of lore and ecosystem, because of all the data that you have stored on the database. So yeah, really cool possibilities there, and I'm really excited to see, how it evolves and where it goes. So Thank you very much for that insight. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. I think to enable this but I think it would have to be like a destructive process, right? Like you'd have to chop shop your rig, like take it apart, and now you can't sell the individual parts yet until you've like done some next step. Like I think there's going to be something where it's like, oh, I don't know, do I want to blow apart my rig here? What if I can't get the parts that I want to like change? Like I think it's got to be this like sort of a bit of a I don't know kind of moment. But anyway, we'll see. Yeah, cool. Thanks for the question. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dodo. Cool. So yeah, I think those are the questions from my crew. So for people who are interested, where are we at in the? I have one more question on this, but where are we at in the life cycle for rigs? Has the game started yet, or are we still like in round one? How late are we?
Yeah, no, we're talking, we're in round one where everybody here is early. We have a roadmap for like what you can do with rigs. And we have a roadmap, like, and part of that roadmap is how to pull other like NFT projects into that experience and lore. Like, you should be able to pilot your thing, and you should decide who that pilot is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like these types of things are happening. We don't yet have a full-blown metaverse game that's leveraging rigs yet. I think the like lowest hanging fruit is going to be some sort of racing type thing. But
when you say metaverse game, do you mean like a virtual world, or is this?
Or any? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably what I had in my head. But any sort of like game where rigs are the like primary like character or component.
Got it.
We're early. We're in the like, here's your rig. Let's build some more experiences on top of it. Phase one.
Cool. All right. I think my last question is just on the vision side. We in this space, we're often hit with like so many different technologies and innovations, and the truth is that they all have their own timelines and visions behind them. Some of them, like AI could be like years away, or metaverse stuff, and then some others are closer. And it's always sort of hard to filter that and bucket it in terms of like, okay, this is cool. Like I'll check in a few years, versus like, oh damn, like who's next to adopt this type of thing. So for you guys, like, how can you tell us a little bit about what would be like a best case scenario a year from now, like internally when you guys talk about like, what Tableland could look like and adoption rates and all that. Just how quickly do you hope to ramp up, and what might the NFT space look like once you do?
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is basically all the NFT space needs in the short term is one runaway success game, mm-hmm. to really just like open the floodgates to all of this. And I am like, our team is like, that runaway success game isn't going to happen if you don't have a dynamic, like a dynamic, configurable, and like customizable experience. Like, I got to be able to change traits on my character and upgrade it and blah 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 over time. Like, that's, if otherwise, what am I doing with my NFT in a game? So we're pretty bullish on that happening pretty soon, and we're funding some projects, game-based projects, to like get the first early demos of that. And these projects will actually, they're actually really rad, but we're not deluded enough to think that they are that one runaway success. Hey, maybe they will be, but like it'd be awfully it would be a bit silly to make that assumption this early. So funding those like demonstrators, so that the next big game goes, if I'm going to have this dynamism, this is how I do it. Here's a very clear path to making that happen. And then we want to be at mainnet in a year from now, which means that like these games that are going to be ready in a year, or year and a half, 2 years from now, will be able to build on like production ready mainnet dynamic database that will scale to the types of interactions that they want to scale to. So that like success for us is like, honestly, between now and a year from now, one runaway success game. And even if that's not built on Tableland, that's going to help Tableland, because people are going to see like, oh shit, games are a viable option here. How am I going to build a dynamic experience? And then it's our DevRel team going like, this is how you build a dynamic game experience. Take that game, throw it on this table, boom. Or take that game and build on top of it, because that's what Web3 enables. So yeah, hopefully that sort of answers that question. We're very bullish on games and NFT-based game experiences, and that's, we're pushing hard to get to mainnet so that we can support those in the real.
Yeah, same. No, yeah, I think anybody who's a fan of what we're building here in general should want this to come as fast as possible. And so when we do see like honest builders, pushing forward with some innovations here, like I'm always down to support them, and it's just great to see, because I do think it is a game changer, no pun intended, but it really will be, I think, for NFTs when we move to this more dynamic phase, for people to understand like, like the power of what these relational databases can be like, as opposed to like the current stage where we're in like where right click saving is like still seen as like a valid criticism, but this is sort of necessary to move to that. So awesome. I really appreciate your time. I think there were some more, a couple questions in limbo, but we already hit an hour here, so I don't want to take too much more of your time, and I think they're a little bit more in the weeds than what we were talking about right now, but this has been awesome, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, totally fun. I am going to I'll stop talking so you all can enjoy the rest of your day, but I'll try to get to everybody's questions in the limbo chat here.
That'd be awesome.
There's some great questions, so I'd love to get some reasonable answers to them.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Carson, and thanks everybody for joining. If we don't chat tomorrow, have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys again soon.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks.